Hi, JD here again with the second video of the day. I've just got to get this off my chest because I discovered something about voluntary termination today that has blown me away actually, and has actually really surprised me, and I wanted to get this message out to you guys straight away. A good friend of mine, I won't obviously go into their personal details, but essentially was looking into voluntary termination. And we put the figures into the spreadsheet, and I couldn't believe that the voluntary termination point on their particular agreement was actually 6 months after the final payment should be made on the PCP. And I thought there was a problem with the spreadsheet. I thought the maths were wrong, and I thought this is impossible. How on earth can we have a 36, in this example, 36-month PCP, and the VT point was coming out at month 42? So I just wanted to flag this because it's something that I'm really surprised that I've missed actually, and I'm really surprised how it works out. Obviously, and we've covered this before on previous videos, the voluntary termination point, let's just remind ourselves, the voluntary termination point on a regulated finance agreement is where you have paid 50% of the total amount borrowed plus interest. And that includes any deposit. So for example, if I've got a £20,000 agreement, the interest is say £2,000 for the sake of argument, so let's say it's £22,000, we can voluntarily terminate on that agreement when we've paid 11. So if we've paid a £5,000 deposit, for example, we need to take the remaining amount, so that's £6,000. So £22,000 divided by 2 is 11. Take off your deposit of 5, that leaves £6,000. So we take that £6,000 and we divide it by our monthly payment, and that tells us after which month we can get out of that agreement. But nowhere on an agreement, and have a look in your own personal agreements, will it ever say when you can get out of it. All it will quote is you can get out of this agreement and you can hand the car back and owe nothing further when you have paid 50% of the total amount borrowed. And I've kind of always assumed that that point where we can get out of the agreement would always fall somewhere between month 1 and month 36 on a 36-month agreement. But as I'll show you in a minute with a few examples, it might not do. And again, that concerns me, because are people buying cars from a dealer thinking, oh, well, you know, I can voluntarily terminate on this at some point, providing I've paid 50%. And that's totally correct. Yes, you can. But as you'll see in a minute, if it's after, if the VT point is after the last monthly payment, how are you going to do that? The only way you can voluntarily terminate, and why would you want to do this, is to overpay on the agreement. So let me just give you an example. I'll base it on a Porsche Cayman that I bought. I bought a Porsche Cayman and it was £42,000. This was a few years ago. And I can't quite remember exactly the amount, but the deposit I think was about £3,250. And the good thing and the bad thing, in a way, as you'll see in a minute, about Porsches is that they have a very, very good residual value. They depreciate less than other cars. And the guaranteed future value on this particular car, I won't forget this bit, was 27, so I won't forget it. I think it was 27,275. So it was a 36-month agreement. And I think the APR was 6.4. Yeah, it was about that, because I was paying about $499. So that's as close as it needs to be. So £42,000, final value of 27. So effectively, the difference between the total purchase price and the final value is, as you can see, less than £15,000. And this has never dawned on me before. But if you think about it, how on earth can you ever have paid 50% of the total amount borrowed if your guaranteed future value is higher than 50%? And obviously in this case it is. So let's have a look. So 36 months. So you say, okay, well, I'm going to pay this. Now, usually on a PCP, obviously you've got the balloon payment, so it's never going to be halfway into the term, and I've covered that previously, and I think people sometimes misunderstand where the VT point is. They think it's half the term. It's not, it's half the value. But look at what's happened here. My VT point is at month 42.44, and it's only a 36-month agreement. So unless I was to overpay on the agreement, and I still don't know whether that would work thinking about it, because you're still paying down to a finite guaranteed future value. So you're still never going to pay more than half. So thinking about it, there are going to be certain agreements, and the obvious one that springs to mind is a 2-year agreement, because a 2-year agreement, even on a car that depreciates, you know, pretty much averagely, pretty much by average, whatever. Any agreement with a 2-year term, let's say you buy, I don't know, a car at £30,000, you do it over, let's put no deposit in for the sake of argument, you do it over 2 years, and after 2 years its guaranteed future value is 15,500 for the sake of argument. Let's make it a much more generous interest rate, 3.9. Ooh, look at that. That's interesting. Oh no, that's because it's 36 months. I thought that was a bit wrong there. 24 months, as we said. Oh, 23.43. So that's interesting. We are pretty much at the very end of the agreement before we can VT. Let's try it at 16,000. Yeah, we're over lot. So really, the guaranteed future value only has to be slightly over 50% for us never to get to the VT point. And that is something that I've never considered before. So, you know, there's obviously nothing wrong. You know, the agreement clearly says this is how much you, so an agreement will always say this is the 50% point, this is how much you will need to have paid us to get out of that agreement. But what I'm saying is there's going to be certain agreements, cars with very strong residuals, or any agreement where the guaranteed future value is a little bit more than 50% of the total amount borrowed, you're never going to get to that VT point. Never. It's impossible. So, you know, if I wanted to VT on this agreement, there'd be absolutely no point, because I'd have reached the guaranteed future value before I've reached the VT point. So you'd give the car back anyway. Does that make sense? So it's quite an interesting example. Let's just take another example. Let's say £40,000 car. Let's try it with a bit of a deposit in. So let's say we're going to put a £2,000 deposit in, and the guaranteed future value after 3 years is £24,000. So it's a very strong residual, and we're going to do it over 36 months. Yeah, look at that. So £40,000, £2,000 deposit, guaranteed future value of 24,000, 36-month agreement. Our VT point is 40.5. We're never going to be able to hand that car back before the very end of the term, when your guaranteed future value is reached and you just hand the car back anyway. Sorry, when I hit stop, I just worked out something else, so I just wanted to come back in for one more minute. If we start with something I've just noticed on this VT point thing, if we start with an APR of 0%, a total amount borrowed of £20,000, and a guaranteed future value of exactly 50%, it goes to show that the VT point will be reached at month 36. So after we've made all the payments. That makes sense. We've borrowed 20, we've paid 10,000, okay? Because our guaranteed future value is 10,000, so that's what we've paid down. But interestingly, and excuse the pun with the word interestingly, if I start to increase the APR, the VT point actually moves. So if I were to say 5% APR, it's obviously now moved further into the agreement, 32.71 months instead of 36, which means we can then increase the GFV a little bit higher than the 50% mark, and that's what I did on the previous example a minute ago. So let's try it at £12,000. We're still over the agreement, so 36 months, more than half guaranteed future value. It's now the VT point showing us 38.81. So again, like I've just said, you would never reach that point. But if the interest rate was, say, 10% APR, we can now VT at month 35, so within the agreement. Obviously, it's a load of nonsense because we don't want to pay higher interest because our monthly payment's rocketing, but it just shows you that the guaranteed future value doesn't necessarily have to be half of the purchase price or less. It also depends on how high the interest rate is as well as to whether you will ever be able to VT within an agreement. I think that makes sense. Thanks for watching. See you next time.